to the battle. Put our armor on, draw our swords. Let's run to the battle. Shout loud and glorify the Lord. Let's run to the battle. Put our armor on, draw our swords. Let's run to the battle. Shout loud and glorify the Lord. Come on, run. Let's run. Let's run.
I lead a ministry that interfaces with thousands of dads every year. And we hear some common refrains from dads, and we are dads ourselves. So we not only hear this, but we know this to be true. And one of the things that we hear all the time is communication with their children is a struggle. If I were to ask dads to list, and if I were to ask you, you might be sitting by yourself watching this, or you may be in a room full of guys. Everybody raise their hand if you've ever had trouble communicating with your children. And I'll bet you, if you're honest, a lot of the hands would go up. And your hand on the inside is probably going up. I've been there. We've all been there. And I've found that there are three things that we tend to do as dads that get in the way of communicating effectively with our kids, or maybe better said, or more bluntly put, there are three mistakes we tend to make over and over. If we can pull those mistakes out, we could have a much better communication with our children. So let me do this. Let's walk through together. What are those three mistakes that dads tend to make when trying to communicate with their kids, and how can we fix or rectify those mistakes? Mistake number one, we tend to think that communication is about sending. Communication is about receiving. Communication is about receiving. In the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 20, verse 5, it goes like this. The purpose in a man's heart is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Now think back to when that proverb would have been written, thousands BC, when going and getting water was no small task. You had to walk to the well, and the well may be miles away. You had to take a bucket. You had to go down deep and pull the water up. So getting water out of a well was not like us today where we just turn on a faucet or we snap off the lid of a bottled water. It was a big deal to go get water. Well, guess what? It's a big deal to pull the purposes of someone's heart out. And the only guy that can do it, as Proverbs would say, is a man of understanding, or the NIV says, one who has insight. One who has insight. Dad, the purposes in your child's hearts are like deep waters. And if we have insight, we can draw them out. Communication is not about sending. Communication is about receiving. Are you a receiving dad? Are you talking or are you listening? Are you talking or are you listening? The second mistake we make ties right to that, and that is, are we more of a talker or are we more of an asker? Ask yourself this question. When's the last time you asked your child an open-ended question to which you didn't know the answer and on which you had virtually no opinion? I bet it's been a while. We either tell our kids what to do or we ask them like trap questions. You really going to wear that out of the house? You think that's good music? You think your friend's a good influence? When the answer is baked into the tone and the style of the question, and our kids know. Here's what's amazing. Do you know how many questions Jesus Christ asked in the Gospels that we have recorded? Some commentators say it's as many as 307 distinct questions that Jesus asked. And now consider something, Dad. He probably knew all of the answers. Yet, he asked the questions. Here's a sampling, just from the book of Matthew, and just a few. What reward will you get? What are you doing more than others? Why do you worry about clothes? Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? How can anyone enter a strong man's house and carry off his possessions unless he first ties up the strong man? Why did you doubt? Who do you say I am? What is it you want? What do you think? Over and over, Jesus Christ asked questions, many of which he knew the answer to. So why did he ask? Because he was around at the beginning of creation, and he knows how our mind and our hearts are wired. And here's what he knows. When we ask questions, we tap into someone's mind and their heart in a different way, through a different door than when we make statements. Don't we? The third thing, the mistake that we tend to make is we make the mistake that we think communication is about winning or losing. We're having a debate, and there's going to be a winner, and by golly, it's going to be me, and I will win because you're stupid in 11 and I'm smart in 41. Man, doesn't that bleed through our communication sometimes? And our kids can sense that we're having a conversation, and at the end of this conversation, there's going to be a winner and a loser, and it's going to be the child who loses. Communication is not about winning and losing. Communication is about understanding. Communication is about understanding. Now, there are moments when if your child's running out into traffic, there's ways we communicate where there's got to be a loser right now. If your child's going to do something that harms themselves or harms others, I think we all know there's a gray area here. But for the most part, most of our communicative interactions with our children are not life and death situations, but we treat them like that. And we come down on them in a way that demeans them and dismisses them. When in reality, a lot of our conversations with our children would be better if they ended like this. Man, son, thank you for sharing that with me. I now see where you're coming from better than I did before. What's for dinner? The end. Dad, you don't have to win every time. Communication's not a battle. If it is, we're kind of doing it wrong. There are going to be arguments. I've raised 5 boys. I've had my share of arguments. But Dad, for the most part, can we lean in? In his book, Shepherding a Child's Heart, Ted Tripp called it this. He called it rich entreaty. Rich entreaty. And what it meant was, instead of making statements or asking bad questions, can we reach in and pull something out? Like the proverbial guy we saw in Proverbs 20 verse 5. Can we reach in and pull something out? For example, Dad, have you ever asked your child this question? How's your day? And I can hear you now. What was their answer? Fine. And then you go to your wife and say, these kids, they don't communicate at all. Dad, can I say this to you with like a heart of love and how I care for you? I can't see you, but I care for you. That's a lousy question. Brother, that is a lousy question that deserves a one-word lousy answer. Rich entreaty is this idea that we're going to reach in and ask an interesting question. So, Dad, I want to give you, at the end of this video, I want to wrap up with 4 or 5 super practical questions you can ask your child tonight that I promise you are better than, how was your day? So one could be, and it's simple, especially if you've got young children, what is your favorite whatever? Fill in the blank. Favorite animal, favorite color, favorite food item, you pick. Just get them talking. Another could be, why do you think that? How many times have your teenage kids said to you something that you thought was abjectly stupid, and you just let them know you thought it was dumb? Instead, ask them this. Why do you think that? And then start to peel back the onion as to how they got to that conclusion, albeit perhaps an errant or foolish or immature conclusion. Peel back the onion, see what you can find. Or ask them a version of that called, how did you arrive at that? One of my very favorite questions isn't even a question. Tell me more. Tell me more. When your child says, my teacher XYZ, tell me more. And then a last one is this, very simple. What do you want? They gripe about their teacher, they gripe about their mom, they gripe about their best friend, they gripe about their coach. Just ask them this. What do you want? And then peel back the layers of their heart, much like the person we saw in Proverbs who would go and get water and draw it out. Be patient and ask questions. Dad, if you want to unlock communication with your kids, receive, don't send. Listen, don't just talk. And seek to understand, don't just try to win.
Run to the battle. Put your armor on, draw your sword. Let's run to the battle.